Formula One's 2026 rulebook says an engine has to be measured cold. So Mercedes built an engine that gets bigger when it is hot. Then they won the first 5 races of the season. Nobody protested. Nobody could. Because Mercedes had not broken the rule. They had just read it more carefully than anyone else. To understand this, you need one number: compression ratio. It is how hard an engine squeezes the air and fuel before it burns it. Squeeze harder, burn better, make more power. Simple. Until 2025, F1 engines were allowed to squeeze at 18:1. For 2026, the FIA cut that limit down to 16. And they did it for a genuinely good reason. F1 wanted new engine manufacturers: Audi, Cadillac. Fresh money, fresh factories. Building an 18:1 engine that survives a full season is brutally hard. Lower the limit, and a newcomer has a chance of not blowing up. So the rule was written. Article C5.4.3. No cylinder may exceed a geometric compression ratio of 16.0. Clear, firm, unambiguous. And then, underneath it, the sentence that decided the championship. The measurement is to be executed at ambient temperature. Ambient temperature, room temperature, cold. The engine is checked, sitting in the garage, switched off, stone cold. Here is the thing about metal. Metal expands when it gets hot. Every engineer on Earth knows this. An F1 engine does not run at room temperature. It runs at around 130 degrees. So the engine you measure in the garage is not the engine that races. And if you know exactly how much your metal will grow, you can aim for that. Design the piston to sit low and legal when cold. Let the heat push it up closer to the top when it is running. The gap shrinks, the squeeze increases, the compression ratio climbs. So, how much movement are we talking about? Former F1 technical director Gary Anderson ran the numbers. On a standard 80mm piston, you need to move the crown 0.5 millimetre. 0.5 millimetre takes you from 16:1 back to 18:1. The entire rule change, undone by the thickness of a few sheets of paper. In power terms, it is worth about 10 kilowatts. 13 horsepower, which sounds small. It is not small. Over a lap, it is worth 3 to 4 tenths of a second. Teams spend $100 million chasing 1/10. Mercedes found 4 of them by reading a footnote. And crucially, at no point is anything illegal. When the scrutineer measures it, the engine genuinely is under 16:1. When it crosses the line first, it genuinely is not. Both statements are true. That is the whole trick. Mercedes were not the only ones. Red Bull powertrains got there too. December 2025. The rest of the paddock works out what is happening. And they are not happy. Ferrari, Audi and Aston Martin write a joint letter to the FIA. Ferrari boss Fred Vasseur puts it bluntly. Loopholes in the wording, he says, are much more dangerous for F1. He has a point. This is not a bolt-on gadget you can ban on Tuesday. It is baked into the geometry of an engine that took 4 years to design. Red Bull's engine boss Ben Hodgkinson is unimpressed by the complaints. He calls it a lot of noise about nothing. Then he adds the line of the winter. Any engineer worth their salt who does not understand thermal expansion does not belong in this sport. Toto Wolff calls the whole row a storm in a teacup. He says the advantage is worth 2 or 3 horsepower. Max Verstappen is asked about that number in testing. His answer: you definitely have to add a 0 to that. So the paddock knows, the FIA knows, and nothing can be done in time. The season starts anyway. Race 1, Mercedes wins. Race 2, Mercedes wins. Race 3, Mercedes wins. Race 4, Mercedes wins. Race 5, Mercedes wins. 5 races, 5 wins. Nothing else got a look in. And the driver doing most of the damage is 19 years old. Kimi Antonelli. In his second season, 6 wins and 6 pole positions before the summer break. 209 points. 50 clear of Lewis Hamilton in a resurgent Ferrari. Mercedes lead the constructors on 379. Now, an honest disclaimer, because this matters. The engine trick is not the only reason Mercedes are winning. They also built the best chassis, and they have the best young driver on the grid. But when the margin is 4 tenths a lap, you do not get to pretend it made no difference. And the FIA clearly agreed, because they moved. Before we get to that, there was a second loophole. The 2026 cars have to ramp their electrical power down before the end of a qualifying lap. 50 kilowatts per second, forced, whether you like it or not, unless the system shuts down in an emergency. So Mercedes and Red Bull triggered the emergency shutdown, deliberately, on a flying lap, to dodge the ramp down. Worth between 50 and 100 kilowatts at the timing line. The problem is what an emergency shutdown actually does. At Suzuka, Alex Albon's Mercedes-powered Williams simply stopped on track. Ferrari raised safety concerns. This time, they were obviously right. In April, the FIA issued a technical directive. The emergency shutdown is now only for actual emergencies, which feels like it should not have needed saying. Which brings us to the 28th of February. The FIA announces compression will now be checked hot as well as cold, and from 2027, only in operating conditions. 130 degrees. The change was meant to arrive in August. They pulled it forward 6 races. That is the FIA rewriting an engine regulation in the middle of a season. They do not do that for a storm in a teacup. Their single-seater director, Nicholas Tombasis, then said this: "I do not think this topic ever needed to get to the level of attention it got. The rule changed at Monaco in June. Mercedes are still leading everything, because by then, the advantage was not in the engine anymore. It was on the scoreboard." And here is the part that should worry Formula One more than any of this. The same rules that created the loophole also created superclipping. The 2026 cars are roughly half electric, and they run out of deployment mid-straight. Drivers were losing up to 55 kilometers an hour without touching the brakes. At Melbourne, drivers were downshifting on the straights to manage it. Lando Norris, the reigning world champion, did not sugarcoat it. We have come from the best cars ever made in Formula One to probably the worst. Verstappen called the new formula Formula E on steroids. F1 held an emergency vote and raised the deployment floor for Miami. It helped. It did not fix the underlying idea. And this week, David Coulthard said the quiet part out loud. "We saw this coming," he said, and nobody really was listening. Now, if all of this feels familiar, that is because Formula One has been here before. And last time, nobody was ever told what actually happened. 2019. Ferrari have a straight-line speed advantage nobody can explain. Not a bit quicker, embarrassingly quicker. The suspicion lands on the fuel flow sensor. Here is the rule. An F1 engine may burn 100 kilograms of fuel per hour, no more. A sensor sits in the fuel line and checks it. But the sensor does not watch continuously, it samples. And between the samples, nobody is watching at all. If you know exactly when it blinks, you know exactly when you are invisible. Rivals could not prove it, but the pattern was hard to ignore. So through 2019, the FIA quietly issued a run of technical directives. Each one clarified what teams could and could not do with fuel flow sensors. Ferrari's straight-line advantage then quietly disappeared, which everybody noticed. Then, on the 28th of February 2020, the FIA published a statement. The investigation was complete. They had reached a settlement with Ferrari, and the specifics would remain between the parties. That is it. That is the whole announcement. No verdict, no penalty, no explanation. Ferrari were never found in breach of anything. The other teams lost their minds. 7 of them published the same statement on the same day. McLaren, Mercedes, Racing Point, Red Bull, Renault, AlphaTauri, and Williams. They said they were surprised and shocked. They demanded full and proper disclosure, and they reserved the right to seek legal redress. 2 teams did not sign it, Haas and Alfa Romeo, both of whom bought their engines from Ferrari. The FIA's defense was that they could not prove a breach. Proving it would have meant a long fight they might lose. So they took a deal, banked some technical commitments, and moved on. For 2020, they fitted a second mandatory fuel flow sensor to every car, which tells you roughly everything about what they believed had happened. 6 years later, nobody outside that room knows what the deal said, and that is the pattern. A team finds an edge in the wording. The FIA cannot call it cheating because it is not cheating, so they change the rule instead, quietly, midstream. The team keeps every point it already scored, and the sport calls it a technical clarification. It is the most expensive game of wording in world sport. So, here is the scoreboard on Formula One's biggest rule change in a decade. A rule written to help newcomers handed the advantage to the biggest team on the grid. A safety system got used as a lap time device until a car stopped on track, and the cars themselves got slower on the straights than the ones they replaced. None of it was cheating. Every single bit of it was legal. That is the part that should worry you. In Formula One, the fastest thing on the grid has never been the car, it is the lawyer. If you want the 7 cars that got banned for being too clever, that video is on the channel. Subscribe. F1 writes a new rulebook every year, and someone always finds the sentence.